Have you ever noticed how the conversations that felt effortless with women weren't the ones where you tried hardest? There's something you might not have realized yet. The men who connect most naturally with women aren't asking fewer questions because they're arrogant or disinterested. They're doing something entirely different. They're speaking from a place of presence instead of performance. And here's what's quietly true. Most men over 40 have been taught that being a good conversationalist means asking thoughtful questions, showing interest, being curious about her life. But that advice, while well-intentioned, often backfires. Because when you lead with questions, you're unconsciously positioning yourself as the interviewer, and she becomes the subject. And that dynamic, no matter how polite, creates distance. In the next several minutes, I'm going to walk you through 5 patterns that shift how you engage with women. Not tricks, not lines, just honest adjustments rooted in how connection actually forms. You'll hear why questions can feel like pressure, what women actually respond to in conversation, and how to speak in a way that invites her in rather than putting her on the spot. This isn't about becoming someone you're not, it's about removing what's been in your way. If this topic resonates with you, comment yes. If not, comment no. I read every comment. And if you find value in what we talk about today, I'd appreciate it if you'd like this video and subscribe. It helps more men find this kind of conversation. I don't post often, but when I do, it's with intention. Hit the bell if you'd like to be notified. First pattern. Questions put her in performance mode. Let me give you a scenario. You're at a dinner, a social gathering, maybe a quiet bar. You meet someone, and because you want to show interest, you ask, "So, what do you do?" Then, "How long have you been doing that?" Then, "Do you enjoy it?" She answers, politely, but there's no momentum, no spark. Here's why. Every question you ask requires her to produce an answer. And when the questions come one after another, the conversation starts to feel like an interview, or worse, like work. Research from the University of Arizona found that people feel more connected in conversations where both parties make statements about themselves rather than one person extracting information from the other. It's not that she doesn't want to share, it's that she doesn't want to feel like she's being evaluated or that she's performing for your approval. When you ask a question, you're subtly saying, "Convince me, tell me something interesting." And that pressure, even when unintentional, makes people retreat. This is more common than you think. Most men have been doing this for years without realizing it. Second pattern. Statements create shared space. Here's what changes everything. Instead of asking what she does, you share what you've noticed or experienced. You say, "I've been thinking a lot lately about how much people's work defines them. I used to let it, and now I'm not so sure." Or, "I spent years in a career I didn't love, and it's only recently that I've started to feel like myself again." Notice what happens. You're not asking her to produce, you're offering something. And now, if she wants to, she can step into that space with you. She might say, "I feel that too," or "I'm still figuring that out." Or she might share her own version. But the key is she's choosing to engage, not responding to a demand. According to Pew Research, women consistently report that they value emotional openness and vulnerability in conversation more than surface-level curiosity. When you make a statement about yourself, you're modeling that openness. You're showing her it's safe to do the same. And that's where real connection begins, not in the exchange of facts, but in the sharing of perspective. Third pattern. Your presence matters more than your words. Let me ask you something. Think back to a conversation you had that felt truly alive. Chances are you don't remember every word that was said, but you remember how it felt. You remember the rhythm, the ease, the sense that you were both right there in the moment. That's presence, and it's something most men stop offering when they're nervous or trying too hard. When you're focused on what question to ask next, you're not listening, you're not noticing her, you're in your head, and she can feel that. A study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships found that people rate conversations as more enjoyable when the other person appears relaxed and attentive, even if the topic itself is mundane. It's not that it's about saying the perfect thing, it's about being grounded enough that she feels your attention. Here's what that looks like in practice. You're talking, she says something, and instead of immediately responding with a question, you pause. You let what she said land. You might nod, you might smile, you might say, "That makes sense," or "I get that." And then, if it feels natural, you add your own thought. Not a question, a reflection, a response. Something that shows you heard her and that what she said mattered. Still with me? Comment 1 if this already makes sense. Fourth pattern, curiosity without interrogation. Now, I'm not saying you should never ask a question, that would be absurd, but there's a difference between curiosity and interrogation, and most men don't realize they've crossed that line. Here's the distinction. Interrogation is when you ask a question to fill silence, to keep things moving, or because you think you're supposed to. Curiosity is when something she said genuinely sparked something in you, and you want to understand more. The difference is in your energy. If you're asking because you're uncomfortable with silence, she'll feel that. If you're asking because you're genuinely interested, that comes through too. Let me give you an example. She mentioned she recently started painting again after years away from it. Interrogation sounds like, "Oh, what kind of painting? When did you start? Are you good at it?" Curiosity sounds like, "I love that. I've been thinking about what it means to come back to something after a long time away. It's almost like meeting an old version of yourself." See the difference? One is extracting, the other is connecting. And if she wants to tell you more, she will, but you're not demanding it. A survey conducted across multiple dating platforms found that users reported feeling more attracted to people who shared their own experiences rather than those who asked a lot of questions. This isn't about playing games. It's about recognizing that real interest shows up in how you engage, not in how many questions you can come up with. If you're finding value so far, let me know in the comments. It helps me understand what resonates with you. Fifth pattern, silence is not your enemy. Most men panic when there's a pause in conversation. They immediately reach for a question to fill the space. But here's what's true. Silence, when you're comfortable with it, is one of the most powerful tools you have because it signals confidence. It signals that you're not performing, that you're not scrambling to impress. Think about it this way. When you're with someone you're completely at ease with, a longtime friend, a brother, someone you trust, silence doesn't feel awkward. You can sit together without saying anything and it's fine. That's the energy women respond to, not nervous chatter, not forced enthusiasm, just ease. Research from Northwestern University found that people perceive pauses in conversation as a sign of thoughtfulness and confidence, especially in romantic contexts. The study showed that individuals who were comfortable with brief silences were rated as more attractive and more emotionally secure. So when there's a pause, let it breathe. Don't rush to fix it. She might feel it. She might not. Either way, you're showing her that you're comfortable in your own presence, and that's magnetic. Here's what this looks like in real life. You're walking together, maybe after dinner. The conversation naturally quiets. Instead of saying, "So, tell me about your family," or "What do you like to do on weekends?" you just walk. You notice the night, the sounds around you, her. And after a moment, if something comes to you, you share it. "I love this time of night. Everything feels a little slower." Simple, honest. And now she has space to either agree, to share her own feeling, or to just be there with you. That's connection, not constant noise. Sixth pattern. Stop trying to be interesting. Be interested in your own life. This might sound strange, but stay with me. Most men, when talking to a woman they're attracted to, start performing a version of themselves they think she'll like. They emphasize certain stories, they downplay others. They try to be charming, witty, impressive. And women can feel that because it's not real. Here's what actually works. Talk about your life as if you find it interesting, not in a boastful way, in a reflective way. Share what you've been thinking about, what's surprised you lately, what you've learned. According to research published in Psychological Science, authenticity is one of the strongest predictors of attraction in initial conversations. People are drawn to those who seem genuinely engaged with their own experience rather than those who are trying to curate an image. Let me give you an example. Instead of saying, "I've been traveling a lot for work," and waiting for her to ask where, you say, "I've been on the road a lot lately and I've realized how much I value coming home. I used to think I wanted more adventure, but now I'm finding I want more depth." You're not asking her anything. You're not performing. You're just being honest about where you are. And that honesty gives her permission to be honest too. She might say, "I know what you mean." She might tell you about her own relationship with home and adventure, or she might just nod and you'll feel that she heard you. Either way, you've created a moment of real exchange, not because you asked the right question, but because you shared something true. Quick check-in. Does this match what you've noticed in your own life? Comment yes or not really. Now, let me address something you might be thinking. If I'm not asking questions, won't I seem self-centered? It's a fair concern, and the answer is no, not if you're doing this right, because there's a massive difference between talking at someone and inviting them into your world. When you make statements about your experience, your perspective, your reflections, you're not dominating the conversation. You're opening a door. She can walk through it if she wants. She can add her own thoughts, she can redirect, but the key is you're not putting the burden on her to keep things going. You're contributing, and that feels like partnership, not interview. A study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that conversations feel most balanced when both people share roughly equal amounts of personal information, but the person who initiates that sharing is often perceived as more socially skilled and more attractive. So by leading with your own truth, you're actually making it easier for her. You're showing her it's safe to be real, and that's what mature connection looks like. Let me say this too. If you've spent years asking questions, trying to be the good listener, the interested guy, and it hasn't worked the way you hoped, that doesn't mean you did something wrong. It means you were taught something incomplete. You were told that showing interest means asking about her, and that's partially true. But real interest is shown through presence, through engagement, through the quality of your attention, not through interrogation. And the good news is, this is entirely adjustable. You don't have to become someone else. You just have to stop performing and start participating. Here's what I want you to take from this. Women aren't looking for someone to interview them. They're looking for someone who's comfortable enough in himself to just be there, to share, to reflect, to create space instead of filling it. And you already have that capacity. You've lived long enough to have perspective, to have stories, to have learned what matters and what doesn't. That's not something younger men have, and it's not something you need to hide or downplay. When you speak from that place, from your actual experience, without needing her to validate it or respond in a certain way, that's when she feels your presence. That's when she relaxes. That's when connection becomes possible. Not because you said the perfect thing, but because you were simply, honestly there. What's one thing you've learned about yourself with age? I genuinely like to hear. If this spoke to you, consider subscribing. I don't post often, but when I do, it's with this kind of depth. And share your thoughts below. I read them all. This isn't just content to me, it's a conversation, and your perspective matters. See you in the next one.